This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and this is my weekly review of the points I find interesting in Dave Meltzers' Wrestling Observer newsletter. And there's a good amount of news this week, so I'm going to jump into it here from Dallas, Texas, where I'm here to cover the big SWE Fury event tomorrow night, which I guess I should plug before I get into this. The Sweethearts Brawl in Irving, Texas, here in the Dallas area. Huge event coming up tomorrow. But let's get into the WWE news. As I already reported, after recently suffering 2 heart attacks, the legendary Butch Reed passed away at 66 years old. He'd been one of the major stars of the 80s. He passed away today, and I did manage to get a shoot interview with him back in 2019, which people can look up, that I'm glad I did to document his career. He was involved in the WWE's concussion lawsuit in recent years, so he wasn't on the best of terms with the company. The new quarantine rules in Canada are going to prevent John Cena from being at this year's WrestleMania. I know he's getting married or is married. I think he is married to a Canadian girl, and he also works in the Vancouver area in movies, I believe. He is going to be starring in a Super Bowl commercial for Mountain Dew. And for anyone that doesn't know about these new quarantine rules that might end up affecting more wrestlers, they're certainly going to affect me. Basically, the U.S. announced recently, President Biden says there is going to be some type of quarantine for Canadians coming into the U.S. starting soon, but there's no start date announced for that. There is a quarantine for Canadians or I guess Americans going into Canada right now. For the few Americans that can come into Canada, they have to quarantine for 14 days. But with this new rule coming into place, not only are you going to have to quarantine, but you have to pay $2,000 coming back into Canada to stay at a hotel for a minimum 3 days, maximum of 14 days if you have COVID. But either way, you have to pay $2,000, and these hotels are like prisons. You're only going to be allowed out of your room an hour a day, and there's security making sure you stay in your room. They bring you food. It's really bad. So that's going to deter a lot of people from wanting to leave Canada to come back. Those rules don't start till Valentine's Day, though. The hotel prison, I like to call it. But of course, the way it is now, you have to take a COVID test to get into the U.S. And before you get on your plane to return to Canada, then just in case you caught COVID on the plane, you got to take another test when you arrive in Canada. And these tests are about $180 each. So lots of shitty stuff going on in the world related to COVID. Speaking of COVID, Rey and Dominic Mysterio announced to the OnStart podcast that they both had COVID back in December. And like over 99% of people, they recovered. But we have to screw up everyone's lives here for the small percent of people that pass away, even though cancer kills far more people than COVID. But we don't have to live our lives in fear over cancer, but whatever. I think they need to find ways of still being able to operate due to COVID rather than just do lockdowns, which lockdowns don't make any sense, and vaccinate more people. They've done a really shitty vaccination job in Canada so far, but I'll stop talking about that. WWE has officially announced that Christine Lebrando is the new Senior Vice President of Creative Writing Operations. She will be developing the Raw and SmackDown programs and leading the writing teams there. Does she have any pro wrestling experience? No. She was a senior vice president of original programming at IFC prior to getting this WWE job. But this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone because WWE does not want wrestling people. They don't even see their talent as wrestlers. They see them as storytellers. They're entertainers that tell stories. And they tell shitty stories, and I have zero interest in any of the stories that they tell. As was expected, WWE, despite the current crappy television product, had their most successful financial year in history in 2020. They made $974,207,000 in revenue and $131,892,000 in profits. This is the first time WWE has ever topped $100 million in profits, and this is largely due to the huge TV deals they have. And this is even before the Peacock network deal worth over $1 billion has come into effect. They just have huge TV deals. And they do have, of course, other revenue streams, such as merchandise, but the bulk of their money is coming from that. They did have one Saudi Arabia show in 2020. It's unknown if they're going to have one in 2021 or not yet, but they make millions and millions and millions every time they go to Saudi Arabia as well. The WWE network declined by nearly 80,000 subscribers this year compared to 77,000 last year. So they only lost about 3,000 more subscribers this year, almost identical. But of course, those numbers don't matter anymore because the Peacock network has bought the WWE network for the next 5 years. So they're getting now guaranteed money. They're getting guaranteed over $200 million a year now for their network, which is better than declining revenues. They now have guaranteed $1 billion plus in the next 5 years. Meltzer also points out that the company made great savings this year during the pandemic, furloughing and releasing a lot of employees, cutting down production costs. They don't do a traveling show anymore. They filmed a lot at the Performance Center and at locations where they didn't have to move around and pay all those travel costs. And with all the money they get from the TV show, it doesn't even matter if there's fans in the stands or not. The average age for the men's Royal Rumble this year was 39 years old, making it the oldest Royal Rumble in history. I'm not even 39 years old. Wow. Cesaro has re-signed with WWE. As I previously reported, Gabe Tuff, 42, who I interviewed last year, people can look it up on this channel. According to Meltzer, he actually underwent a sex change operation and is now Gabby Tuft. And he has made a deal with Extra TV for an exclusive discussion on this. So I guess that answers my question from yesterday. According to Meltzer, he's gone through an actual operation for the sex change. So I would guess that means he has a vagina now. I would only guess that. He is married, so I guess doesn't necessarily mean, even though he's transgender now, that he necessarily likes guys. I guess he might consider himself a lesbian. It's all very complicated. He didn't bring any of this stuff up in an interview with me that I did last year with him. That was over an hour long. So I don't know where this is coming from. I mean, it's his choice to do whatever he wants. I do find it interesting that he has an exclusive deal with Extra TV for a discussion about this. So obviously he's obviously been documenting this and has an exclusive deal with Extra TV. So one of the reasons, whether you want to admit it or not, you're doing this is for publicity. Because if you didn't want to do it just for publicity, you wouldn't be doing an Extra TV interview out of it. But obviously, if you're going to get a vagina implanted on you and your dick removed, you also want to be a woman as well. So good luck to you. Speaking of bisexual people, I guess you could say, Lars Sullivan, real name Dylan Miley, 32, was released in early January, but it only came out last week that he was released, or this week actually, this week that he was released. I guess the reason he was released this time is he no-showed TV tapings again, which he had done in the past. But for whatever reason, they continuously forgave him for almost everything he did throughout his time in WWE. He was signed to WWE with no previous wrestling experience in 2015. In other words, he paid no dues. You'll find that the people that pay dues in this business aren't the ones that are no-showing events because they appreciate the opportunities given to them. In 2017, he began on NXT. He had a surgery during his time in developmental. He was supposed to start an angle with John Cena, leading to a match against Cena at the 2019 WrestleMania, but no-showed the TV tapings where they were going to start the build to this angle. Then came out that he had been a wrestling or a bodybuilding message board troll where he had made anti-gay, racist, and bigoted remarks on this message board. However, I guess WWE fined him $100,000 for that. Later came out that he was a gay porn star. And yes, that is why it's funny that Lars Sullivan was a gay porn star, because he had made anti-gay remarks. Apparently for the message board stuff, he also insulted Japanese people, according to Meltzer. And Meltzer says WWE was aware of all this stuff before they brought him up to the main roster. He also had knee issues and spent a lot of time off due to getting those knee issues taken care of. When he returned in October 2020 from his latest medical issues, it came out that he had been harassing a personal training woman. And this was funny. I do recall this because he was actually messaging this woman requesting like sexual pictures from his Lars Sullivan Instagram account. And it's like, that's your WWE Instagram account. Like if you're gonna bother like a woman and request pictures, you might want to do it from your personal account or a fake account. I don't know. That was just weird, but apparently, according to Meltzer, WWE didn't seem concerned about those messages that he had made to that personal training woman. For some reason, they gave this guy all the chances in the world, and he screwed up every single time. Steve Cutler, 33, was released by WWE yesterday. Not very familiar with him. Bobby Lashley was on Peter Rosenberg's show, and he said he largely agreed with The Undertaker's comments in relation to WWE wrestlers mostly being soft now. He said, quote, "Yeah, I don't want to say I agree with him completely. Actually, I can because it's Taker. I can say I agree with him, so I agree with him." End quote. So as I've said, I wouldn't put Lashley in the group of wrestlers that would be considered soft. Lashley's definitely one of the toughest wrestlers of all time. He had a great MMA career, great amateur wrestling career, and there's others that are tough in WWE, but it's a short list. Shelton Benjamin definitely is also tough, and yeah, I'm sure there's others that I'm forgetting. Samoa Joe, I would say, is tough for sure, but overall, the characters are soft and the personalities are soft. The NXT this week featuring Royal Rumble winner Edge making an appearance only did a 0.14 rating. I do like Edge, but WWE paid him a lot of money, which obviously they can afford. They're making huge money. But Edge really hasn't been a ratings mover at all since he's been back. AEW did a big special this week, and they did a 0.32 rating. Impact, featuring AEW stars this week, did a 0.05 rating, and apparently they've lost their TV deal with Free Sport in the UK. The Raw after Royal Rumble only did a 0.58 rating, which is pretty bad considering the Royal Rumble is their second biggest pay-per-view of the year. SmackDown did a 0.62 rating leading into the Royal Rumble on Fox. Apparently AEW is doing a deal now where you can get tickets to 4 TV tapings for $60, so basically $15 a show. They did their Beach Break Dynamite special last week and only had about 650 paid fans at that show, according to The Observer. Another wrestling news, New Japan Pro Wrestling announced that this big television deal in the US they've been talking about is actually for Roku TV, not an actual television network. Dustin Diamond, better known as Screech from the Saved by the Bell series, which I liked. I would love to interview all of the cast members of Saved by the Bell. Hopefully I will one day. I tried to interview Screech. He was good friends with Rick Bassman, but ever since I knew Rick Bassman, Screech wasn't getting back to him about doing an interview with me. This might explain it. He's been suffering from cancer, and he sadly passed away February 1st at the age of only 44. He had been in TNA and as well as Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling, which is where I think he became friends with Bassman. Les Thatcher has been cleared after going through a bout with COVID. He took down COVID at 80 years old, so congratulations, Les Thatcher. Apparently he's back in the gym now. The Stampede Corral in Calgary is being torn down this week. Of course, Stampede would host its bigger events at the Corral because it held more than the Pavilion, which only held 1,700 seats. WWE also ran the Corral for house shows from 2005 on, once they started not doing as good house show numbers because the Saddle Dome could hold about 19 or 20,000. The Corral was better suited for WWE house show numbers. And of course, as discussed in my interview this week with Stampede legend Dan Crawford, who was on this show, Meltzer brings up that there was also a 1995 Stu Hart tribute show at the Corral, which had 4,700 fans in attendance. There is a ton of comments today, but I'm going to get going to the gym soon to make use of my time here in the US where gyms are still open. So I won't answer too many. Have I seen the new Yokozuna documentary? No, I have not. Steve says he's not a fan of WWE. I gave up on it a long time ago. I don't even try to follow it anymore because it just makes me sad. Mark Karen and making fun of me for saying according to Meltzer. Well, I am. This is my Wrestling Observer review. I've said it a million times. I don't agree with everything Dave Meltzer says. We certainly have different tastes in wrestling. He likes the small, flippity-floppity guys overall and more of the AEW style of wrestling. I do not like that style at all. But he does give the most detailed news reports every week, and he's been doing this since at least the 80s. He has a lot of news contacts, so that's why I do a weekly review of his newsletter. And I only go over the points I find interesting. There's a lot more in it for people that want to get the newsletter. Will I interview Ahmed Johnson? I should. I will one day. He's gained a lot of weight. The Big Bosfetti says transgender means he has a pussy. Well, as I said, there was a match that Selena De La Renta sent me of her versus a transgender wrestler that I posted on this channel, where the transgender she was wrestling appeared to still have a dick. So I don't listen. I do whatever you want, but I don't go that way, and I don't really want to be an expert in that. It's not something that even became a topic of discussion until recent years. It's become one. Good for Tyler Rex if he's happy. Colonel Quayle checking in to say hi. Jay Miller, is Cena retired? No, he's not. He's still, I think he'll wrestle for a long time to come, but he's making more money in Hollywood now. Mike Piper is not with me, but I plan to spend the entire winter next year in the United States when I can drive here. The border's closed for driving. So unfortunately, it will cost me a fortune to stay here and rent a car for months on end. So next year I will come for as long as I legally can and drive. Because I've had about all I can take of -20 weather. They call it cold here, the weather it is now, but I'm in a t-shirt outside here. Jet Fan 95, any chance Lars will wrestle for Great North Wrestling? I don't see that happening, mainly because we are focusing more on women's wrestling. If this apocalypse situation ever ends and they let us run events again in Canada, my focus is going to be on women's wrestling because there's more of an audience out there for women's wrestling. And when I post matches on this channel, the women's matches overall get a lot better views than the men. And to be honest, Lars is not really a good wrestler. And he's known more for his controversies and gay porn stuff than his wrestling. So I don't really see what benefit. I don't think he would draw. Because in my company, I got to draw to make money. I don't have billion-dollar TV deals. Good for WWE that they do, though. Juggler brings up Matt Riddle used to be a UFC fighter. True, he did. He is tough. I just cannot stand him. He says the word bro way too much for my taste. I just find it annoying. And he's really skinny. And yeah, just not my style of wrestler. Riddle is like the classic Dave Meltzer style of wrestler. And of course, I know Meltzer loves him. Dale says RIP to Butch Reed. Deadly Sins. What do I think about Goldberg losing to Drew? Well, the Mirror in the UK did report that Goldberg makes over $3 million a year, but not including his merchandise sales. So to wrestle 3 times a year for 2 minutes a time, make $3 million. Yeah, sure, I'll put over a girl for that. That's just good business. And at this point in time, he's 55, making over $1 million a match. So he's doing what he's told. Will Drew McDonald be the next Goldberg? No. Or Drew McIntyre, whatever the hell he calls himself. No. He's actually the lowest rated WWE champion of all time. Huge geek. Takes every chance he gets to break kayfabe. Jesus Christ says, I am not famous. Well, Jesus Christ, thank you for pointing that out. However, people do pay me when they ask for my autograph. So I am famous to some people. And when I was a headliner in Puerto Rico, we actually had very good crowds. And I've been a headliner in Great North Wrestling. And we've drawn some excellent crowds over the years. So as far as am I as famous as a WWE superstar such as John Cena, no. But in my territory, I am known as a wrestler, and in other territories I've worked, yes. And I will be known from here on out as a great reporter that I'm only going to get better at doing, because this is what I like to do. Mike D is missing Piper. Daddy says, I'm popular with his family. Thank you for standing up to Jesus Christ for me, Danny. This Jesus troll and all of his negativity, giving Jesus Christ a bad name. Well, as I said, I'm going off to the gym right now, going to make use of being in Texas where gyms are fully open. So talk to you guys later. I'm going to be meeting up with Teddy Long and a bunch of others later, and I'm going to try and get Teddy to comment on Butch Reed's passing, since Teddy used to manage him.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews,